From a struggling solo practice to a 16-location wellness empire, Dr. Phil Golinsky built RxWellness by surrounding himself with the right people and obsessing over culture. Dr. Phil shares how trusting experts outside of his own strengths helped him grow faster, lead better, and stay focused on what matters most. We'll talk about running a family business, natural health, scale, succession, and why your clinic and your life should run like a healthy spine, aligned, intentional, and built to move. Now let's listen. Welcome to Legacy Unscripted, sponsored by Progeny Coaching. This is the podcast where sports and business collide. I'm your host, Russ Katzman, and here we'll skip the fluff and get straight to the hustle. From athletes turned entrepreneurs to impact-driven business leaders, we dive into the wins, the lessons, and some of those failures that make our legacies worth living. Today, I'm happy to welcome Dr. Philip Golinsky, founder and CEO of RxWellness Spine and Health. That's a mouthful. Welcome to the show, Dr. Phil.
Man, it's so good to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate you jumping on. Now, let's start with kind of your background a little bit. I know you didn't start as an entrepreneur. Talk to me about that transition from pure doctor to wanting to run a business.
Well, I became a chiropractor because I felt it was something that I could be good at. And in the 1990s, chiropractic wasn't even a thing that you could make money with. I was a music major. I played the piano. My brain couldn't think in terms of legal or accounting, so I knew that was out of the question. And I said, well, what could I do with my hands that I felt I'd be good at? And chiropractic, I was seeing a chiropractor because when you're playing the piano all day long, you tend to go to a chiropractor. And it just seemed a natural transition. So I became a chiropractor. I opened a practice, and I was a small business owner for 22 years. I loved it. Along the way, halfway through, I got divorced. I got remarried again to a real business person, a managing director of Big Four Consulting, PricewaterhouseCoopers. And Phoebe, when I saw how smart she was, I said, oh my God, I know nothing about business. But you won't know what you don't know until you actually are in front of someone that knows. And when you compare yourself to someone who's really good at what you didn't know, you take note. And so for the next 3 or 4 years, I pestered Phoebe. I said, and she had this beautiful, high paying salary job, and it was very elite and very exclusive, and not many people could get to her level, and she did. And so one day she came to me and she said, Phil, I was at a meeting with big pharma executives, and they said the pendulum is shifting to natural health. This is back in 2017. And she said, I'm ready to do this. And this wasn't going to be just rebrand from Golinsky Chiropractic to a different name. It was going to be to build as many entrances to natural health care in the DMV area, the Washington, D.C., the Maryland, and the Virginia area. And so in 2018, we rebranded from one RxWellness to now we're on the way to get to 16 in 7 years. That's done. And it would not have been possible without the business arm of Phoebe. And she's a great managerial skills. I've got the coaching, developing, entrepreneurial side. My risk tolerance, for better or for worse, is very high. My bar is very low. And so I knew, though, talking about entrepreneurship, I was smart enough to, I wasn't talented enough to build a business on a larger level because I myself couldn't scale. I could teach, but I couldn't scale. I didn't have those skill sets. And when Phoebe walked into my life, I knew this was the right person.
Well, this is so interesting because I say this all the time to people in my networking groups, et cetera. Many of the highly paid or highly educated jobs, you get doctors, lawyers, chiropractic, even athletes to some extent where they've been focused in one area for so long. These individuals, they come up with a very narrow path and insight into what it means to build any type of business or succeed in a career. Talk to me about how probably that number 1, number 2 lesson that Phoebe was able to share with you that you thought, oh man, that makes sense now. I learned all this stuff about chiropractor, but now it makes sense about how to run a practice.
Well, law, doctoring, athleticism, musicianship, none of those highly specialized, I would call them subject matter experts, were trained in business. They just weren't trained in business. They were trained in something else. Our brains, we developed a neurological buildup to think in a certain way. So Phoebe can do what she does every single day, but you put me a 57-year-old guy in a foreign country like Japan, I'm probably not going to come out even in 5 years learning that language as a 7-year-old person that was thrown into the same country with the same opportunity will. You understand?
Correct.
You're asking me to tell you what I've learned in business. I learned that I need to hire much smarter people in business than me because that's not my swim lane.
I
That's
love that.
simple, but I got better. I'll tell you what I did get better at. I got better at coaching what my swim lane is. It's developing, it's coaching. When I sit in front of you, I'm going to make you feel like you could run through a brick wall. But because I had a huge team that could do the things that I wasn't so good at, balancing AR, balancing the accounting, scaling the management team, doing all the other cool stuff that I can't do, where I didn't have to focus on that, I could just focus on what my swim lane was, which was what I just mentioned before. And I got really, really, really good at that.
Well, it's interesting because I talk to business owners all the time, and most of them are visionary of some sort or another, and they want to be able to pass this on to their team.
Yeah.
Some succeed in doing so, others don't. What
Yeah.
was the key to you to kind of getting that type of energy and enthusiasm into the culture of your business?
When I first ran into Dr. Sid Williams, I was brand new at Life University back in 1991. I really didn't
Mm,
know what chiropractic was. When I was in the presence of Dr. Sid Williams, it was like coming into the presence of Billy Graham, but Sid Williams was talking chiropractic. He was the most enigmatic, charismatic
mm,
human being I'd ever met at that moment. And probably to this day, one of the top three. And I had the opportunity to hear Dr. Sid Williams speak every Thursday at 1 o'clock for assembly. I had the opportunity to go to his Dynamic Essentials every third month, every quarter for a whole weekend with this man. And I knew that one day he wouldn't be on this world, but he was giving me Kool-Aid to drink. And you asked him, where does this enthusiasm come from? Where does this vision come from? And it came from Sid Williams. And I
mm.
believe that in some cosmic sense, that if you think hard enough, that your innermost dominant thought becomes your outermost tangible reality. What I'm doing right now is exactly what I have thought about obsessively for 30 years. And I felt that if I thought about this hard enough, magnetically, I would attract the people into my world that could produce on a tangible physical level what I've been thinking about for the last 30 years.
Do you feel like you've arrived then?
No, I feel like the holographic image that I was thinking about is revealing itself where space and
Yeah,
time are synchronizing right now. It's happening. I've been thinking about this and it was like drop, 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 like titration. Remember titration classes in
yeah,
the industry? Drop, 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 nothing happens. Drop, drop, drop. One drop, boom. I
yep.
think
All of
that
a
boom is
sudden.
happening. I think it's happening right now.
Okay, so tell me what that boom looks like then for you.
Well, for 22 years, I was sharpening the knife, learning my processes and procedures, learning
Yeah.
how to do a day one, learning how to market, learning how to talk to people, learning how to overcome objections. In a small office, I had 4 staff. I had one associate doctor, I had one front desk person, I had one billing person. And for those 22 years, then when we rebranded back in 2018 to RxWellness Spine and Health, we had a few doctors and we doubled the practice in size and in volume and in financials in 1 year. I said, huh, that equation works. Let's do two the next year. So
Mm,
in 19, we did two more. Then COVID happened. And interestingly enough, we actually grew more than we projected to grow during 2020 because people were looking into natural healthcare. They knew that there's a lot of hesitations by taking the COVID vaccinations, and they were actually looking obviously to get healthier versus to prevent sickness. But then in 2021, we put up another practice or two more practices, and then we started to acquire practices. And so you're saying, how does it look? How is it looking? We're building teams right now. We're coaching, we're training, we're developing. But now we have a management team to help scale without having the existing offices lose its power and inertia, right? So what that looks like is we went from 6 to 12 in 1 year, and we're about to close a 4 office deal in New Jersey. So that could be 16 within
mm.
12 months. So that's
Wow.
what it's looking. And, you know, people say, how are these opportunities coming to you? Just from being authentic, just by being real. We don't have a manager, and we don't have an M&A team, a mergers and acquisition team in place. These are friends of mine that I've developed relationships with that sometimes when the stars align and they say, hey, one flame separately is a lot weaker than two flames put together, right? That's what the Buddha said. You can't extinguish one flame by putting another to the flame. It grows higher. These offices, again, most doctors don't have business experience. They
Right.
don't. So now they're coming on to us, and we have a business team. We can run their business. We can make them more money than they could do on their own, and they could have a lot more freedom and less stress. Who wouldn't want that?
Yeah, I hear you. So you drew a quick distinction in the middle of that,
Yeah,
and that is the difference between getting healthier
yeah,
and preventing sickness.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Talk to me about that distinction.
Okay. You can't remove the darkness. You have to restore a light. If you have a room filled with light, you can't have darkness. It can't exist. It can't exist. The same thing with health. Cancer does not make a system sick in most cases. There's some genetic anomalies, okay? But moving those aside, high blood pressure does not make a person sick. Diabetes does not make a person sick. It is a sick system, a person that has ignored the health for up to decades.
Mm.
That symptoms occur. I'm 57 years old. I've got the energy of a 40-year-old. People hear that I'm 57. How do you, what's your secret? There's no secret. I don't drink. I never liked alcohol, so that didn't really, it wasn't really a pain to get rid of it.
Sure.
I don't think people should drink. I think alcohol is a toxin. Even one shot of whiskey is a toxin to the human body. I think people should move. I think people should move around, exercise their body. I think people should eat clean, eat simply. If you can't pronounce the chemicals that you're reading on a label, don't eat it. I think the food that God grows, and I'm not a vegetarian, okay? God grows
Yeah.
animals, so I'm a meat eater. But the food that God grows, eat it. The less processed, the healthier it's going to be, okay? So you asked me what's the difference between getting healthy versus preventing sickness. My philosophy is if you embrace wellness care, you're less likely to become sick as your immune system starts to slow down as we get older.
Gotcha. No, I
Yeah,
like it because the interesting part now is this is a very strong philosophy that you're pushing forward, and it's
yes,
not necessarily one that we're seeing in mainstream.
yes.
And so finding people to run your centers now, finding people to be a part of your team, you need to get them on board with that philosophy. Have you found that difficult, or have you found it easy to find people that want to get on board this with you and want to drive it forward?
Well, I found it very enlightening and almost very refreshing because when I say that, even to your listeners who might never have heard that phraseology, you can't
Sure.
remove darkness, you have to restore the light. You can't remove sickness and disease, you have to restore life, you have to restore health. And I'll go into that in a little bit more depth. But it's an aha moment. Like, wow, I never thought of it that way. Teach me more. Teach me more, Dr. Phil. But then they see how I live. Then they see how I talk, how I act, how I function. And they say, well, I'm not a genetic anomaly.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you treat your body with kindness and embrace the wellness approach for 30 years. You just age slower. You do. And if you love what you do and you have good relationships, you're also going to keep the cortisol level down. And
Hmm.
high cortisol level, it's the stress hormone. It's going to, I believe, shrink your telomeres faster. Your telomere is your DNA to your blueprint on how your body ages. And if you can slow down the degradation of your telomere, you're going to slow down your biological aging.
Hmm.
I believe, and that's what so I walk the talk. I am the president and CEO of RxWellness. It wouldn't become me to forget about health, to disregard my health. It wouldn't be becoming of me being out of shape. I
Right.
also enjoy being healthy because we only have so many years on this earth. Okay, so many years. Whether the average age for believe a male is 78 years old in America. And
Mhm.
those last 5 years are not going to be as good. Now, hopefully I go beyond 78, but if I'm average, I want my 78 years to be as quality driven as possible. I don't want to be 60 years old, not being able to take those trips because I worked so hard to the Andes Mountain,
Yep.
to places that my body can't take me to because my body is now not healthy enough to do that. I want to be able to go until I can't go. And if I treat my body with kindness and 40 years old and 50 years old and 55 years old and 60 years old, I hope that when I'm 70 years old and I'm ready to maybe hang my shoes up on the wall and ready to maybe, travel, that I can do everything I was able to do when I was 40 years old.
I love it. And a couple things that you mentioned there. One of them was around cortisol, right? And you're a very high energy individual. Um, High energy does not necessarily equate to stress, right? Just because you
No,
have a bunch of energy doesn't mean you're putting stress on your body. If you love what you do, if you love the business that you're running, if you love the people that you're surrounding yourself with, there's
yeah,
no reason to have cortisol kicking in because your body's relaxed. You're in an environment that's comfortable, that you enjoy,
yeah,
and you can be as high energy as you want and still be taking care of your body.
yeah. I think high energy, absolutely, especially if you are inspired. If you're
Yeah.
inspired, a lot of the people that I've been inspired by, maybe personally, they were high energy, but you clearly saw that they were purpose driven. They were mission focused. They loved what they did. They didn't consider what they did a job. And I got to tell you something, Russ, I don't believe I've worked too many days in my life. I've been very blessed to
Yeah.
been fortunate enough just to get lucky to find this beautiful profession, the beautiful philosophy of chiropractic that it does, and it's always embraced wellness care. I think the insurance companies seduced the chiropractic profession to be in exchange for money for musculoskeletal back pain care. But the very first adjustment back in 1895 restored Harvey Lillard's deafness. The first adjustment was never for pain. The first adjustment given in 1895 was to restore
Mm.
a person's deafness that he had fallen down the stairs 10 years prior. The developer, D.D. Palmer, heard that he had fallen down and said, "Oh, he twisted his neck and he lost his hearing. I wonder if I could untwist his neck and maybe restore the hearing." And that's how chiropractic was born. Chiropractic was
Huh.
never musculoskeletal complaints. It was always about restoring organic illnesses because the theory was that the spine in itself was the pipeline from information from the brain, and the spine itself would give off information to those nerve roots that go to the organs, and the organs would receive the information from the brain. And if the spine was out of alignment, instead of protecting those nerves that come through the spine to the organs, instead of protecting those nerves, it would irritate those nerves, and those organs at the other ends of those nerves wouldn't get the right signals, and there would be a thing called a dis-ease. A dis-ease, lack of ease, is not a disease process, but it's the
Yeah.
precursor to having something physically tangible that you can measure. And
Hmm.
that's how I was born with.
I never knew that.
Yeah,
That's a great story. So, you've found this wonderful partner in Phoebe, beautiful, intelligent, all this kind of stuff, everything you'd want.
I'm blessed.
You guys have built this business,
Yes,
but you're not young anymore. And if you've got 20 years left, you go to that 78, right?
right, right.
20 years and change left. Um, this is the time people start saying, you know what? How about transitioning that business? How about a succession plan? Have you
Right.
started thinking about that, or you still have that on the back burner?
No, in fact, sometimes we call it the hallway theory, the hallway philosophy. You walk down a hallway and you don't know what's halfway down, what doors open up for you. So as we keep on walking down this hallway, more and more doors have opened up, and what's opened up to us are outside investors, such as private equity roll-ups. Now, I'm not the first person to talk about this
Sure.
at all, not even close. Dentistry has been rolled up, veterinarian has been rolled up, physical therapy has been rolled up, but really chiropractic in itself has not really been rolled up to a large degree.
Mm.
But private equity investors, Wall Street, are looking at business models, right, to possibly invest in. We'd like to be one of those that we can take in outside investors because we want to go onto a national level. Now, Phoebe and I, because we love what we do, and it's not a question we're just racing to the end to retire. We
Sure.
do love what we do, but we would love to have outside investors invest in our company so we can take this to more of a national brand. And as
Mm.
a some brand, we'd have unlimited debt, so I could do more training, more coaching, more developing. My idea for me was retirement, Russ, was going to be to go back to a chiropractic college, whichever chiropractic college would have me, and become a professor. To teach
Oh,
what
really?
yeah, yeah, teach the young ones, teach the students that are going to be out there for the next 30 to 40 years. Um,
Yep.
but to answer your question, we are in alignment, Phoebe and I, with developing our office at a level where there might be a first bite in a few years. We call it first bite, bringing in outside investors. We have a board of advisors on our team that's done 78 roll-ups already, 7 on a
Mm.
nationwide level he led himself, and 78 that he's coached uh, family-owned businesses like Phoebe and I are right now, and he's given us some wonderful advice. And we have a beautiful team, and that some of which he's directed us to guide us in working with us.
Got it. Now, you just mentioned family owned.
Yeah,
Sometimes that has an interesting connotation in the culture of a
right.
business. How have you taken your values between you and Phoebe and put that into people that are running the newest centers, maybe the new 4 or 5 that you're getting spun up right now? How do you make that transition and get them on board with that family owned culture?
Well, family owned, I might not be accurate when I say it. I just know that we are called a family owned business because it was started
Sure.
by our, our family. But when someone comes on board with us, they know that Phoebe and I are married, and they'll eventually say, "How do you guys work together?" Well,
Yeah.
Phoebe's in one room, I'm in another room, and I'll be
Yeah.
honest. We during the daytime, we have two separate and distinct roles. I work with the doctor. She works with the business team and the management team. She's on the phone calls with legal. She's on phone calls with accounting. She's on phone calls with billing. I want nothing to do with that, but I'm on phone calls with the doctors. I'm a lot of the time in the office helping develop maybe technical skills, maybe certain procedural skills that the doctors just don't have. They're like 80% there, and that, another drop, little titration, boom, they get to 100% just because I'm there. I'm watching what they're doing, and they're not doing things exactly as I think it should.
Yep.
So the staff and the team is very comfortable because they know that when we're together, we are aligned in our philosophy of culture, but we also have separate and distinct responsibilities and roles within RxWellness itself.
Yeah. And I think that what you're kind of describing is that Venn diagram, right? Of the crossover for the two of you. And for the listeners out there, that's that circle diagram where you kind of have circles of influence and cross them over.
Yeah,
Um, the beautiful part about that, from the way you're describing it, is that if we were to draw a Venn diagram of you and Phoebe, the values and the family culture and the philosophy and all that kind of stuff is kind of in the middle where the two of you cross over. And then you have all these other things that you're doing in the business. She has things that she's doing in the business. Never the two shall meet, and so therefore no conflict between the two, etc.
none.
I love that, and I think that's the best way for a family business to work, right? And even if it's, I don't care if you've got 3 or 4 family members within the business that are there, you got to watch that crossover part because that's typically where you end up with conflict if there's any dissension between the two.
Well, I say Phoebe can't adjust an atlas. That's the top bone of the vertebra. But I can't do business. And we respect each other's boundaries because we
Yeah,
know the one thing that Phoebe will give me, she'll say, Dr. Phil is one of the hardest. I might not be the smartest guy in business, and I'll fully admit that. I'm not the business guy, but I'm a hard worker. I'm passionate about what I do. And I could say the same thing for Phoebe. She's the most driven, motivating, inspired person I've ever met in what she does, and competitive as heck. I mean, she is just, you want her on your team because if she's your adversary, boy,
yeah,
you're gonna lose. She's not gonna sleep until she wins. I don't
that's
have,
terrific.
but now we do have Dylan Casey. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's my son. He's director of marketing. We have Megan. She's my daughter. She's now part of the integration team. And this has been organic. It wasn't like we brought them up. They're not chiropractors, but we didn't bring them up to work with us. That's sort of how it happened. They just saw us working and developing, and they saw this thing develop in front of their eyes. That they both had jobs to go to when they graduated college, but somehow they just found a part with us. And again, when you have family that wants to win as much as you want to win, you could trust them more than every other person because you just know that they're so loyal. And really, loyalty is the key component to who we want to work with.
that's terrific. What does it feel like? Give me a touch of that dad feeling of having those kids come back to the business and want to be a part of it.
That's the jackpot because
Yeah,
I get to be I get to see my kids. And I got Lauren, she does notes. She's a CA in one of the offices. And we got Josie, she's part of the aesthetics team. So we have 4 kids. Um, the jackpot is I get to see my kids. And for better or for worse, now entrepreneurs that have scaled it. Look, if you're a successful entrepreneur, you're probably a hands-on person. You're not just in Tahiti on your yacht commanding orders.
yeah,
It's to stay successful. You're working 50, 60, 70 hours. There's no shame in that. That's just part of the deal. You're not working in, you're working on the business, right?
right.
So I get to work with my kids on a regular basis versus so many of my other friends that haven't seen their kids in months because they're working in a different part of the country,
Hmm.
right? Or their relationship just waned because they're on to different things. my relationship with my kids stays very strong. And yes, the majority of our conversations is business, but of course it always touches into personal. We go give into personal, go back to business. Um, that's the jackpot. I get to work with my
Yeah.
family and stay very, very tight with my family. Um, if there's one, that's the most satisfying thing. It far transcends the money and the pride of RxWellness. I get to be with my family on a regular basis and still stay connected with them. And you can see me getting emotional because that to
Yeah.
me,
Yeah, that's incredible. We're going to have to rerun this on Father's Day next year. We'll
yeah,
have to kick this podcast out and rerun this short on that next Father's Day. Um, so let's talk about your clients or your customers a little bit.
yeah,
Love a good story.
okay,
Give me your kind of your top story of influencing somebody's life that came to one of your centers.
all right, top, top. Well, what you're asking me top? I got a few of them,
Yeah.
but let me give you two, because the
Okay.
first one I'll never forget because it was my very first patient. No, coming out of chiropractic college, I did a very specific technique, and if anyone wants to look it up, called upper cervical specific knee chest, and anything in the upper cervical field, upper cervical specialty, that's where the miracles happen. You got diabetes, adjust the atlas. You got Parkinson's syndrome. If something's going to help through a chiropractic adjustment, and before I get turned into the board of medicine, I'm not saying that a chiropractic adjustment can cure Parkinson's, but an upper cervical adjustment can turn back on the medulla oblongata, the brainstem,
Hmm.
and revive, restore vibrational frequency. And vibrational frequency is the vibrational energy that can stir cells into life. And when you have a body filled with life, you can't have sickness and disease. Just remember that. You can't have darkness if you have a room filled with light. You can't have sickness and disease if you have a body filled with health. Okay. Now, the chiropractic philosophy is that health starts from above down, inside out. So when Mr. I can't say that first name because I think it's a HIPAA thing, and I
Sure.
don't know that. But when Mr. Peters was sent to me because I was sharing space with another doctor, and he wasn't getting anywhere, the other doctor was not getting anywhere with this patient. He said, "Well, you do upper cervical, and I've heard upper cervical adjustments can really help a person in ways that full spine adjustments can't." So I started taking care of Mr. Peters. Now, Mr. Peters' liver was failing. You
Mm.
could smell alcohol, not ammonia coming from his breath. You saw the pupils of his whites become yellow, and his skin was pale gray. This is my very first patient, and trust me, I didn't have any patients my first 2 or 3 months of starting out. I knocked on
Yeah.
1,000 doors, and a few people came in, but this was the first real patient of mine that was paying me money, and I was
Yeah.
adjusting. I was scanning the nervoscope, right there, the nervoscope with the dual probe up the neck to make sure that he was in pattern. He wasn't in pattern. Seeing the
Right.
go left and right that he needed an episode, so I adjusted him. Okay, I forgot the listing, but I adjusted him, had him rest for 10 minutes. The scope was straight. I got a
Okay.
straight line. A straight line is the goal.
Yep.
I said, Mr. Peters, you're going to get better. And he said, okay. I go, I'll see you tomorrow. The line was all wavy. Adjusted him again. The line was straight. And I said, well, I got nothing going on. He was preparing for death. Okay, that's how severe it was. So he'd already like quit his job, and he was looking for a cure. And so I said, well, I'm not doing anything. You're not holding your adjustments for even 24 hours. So I started having him coming in twice a day. And twice a day, he would get adjusted. And twice a day, all of a sudden, the line was holding. The second time he came in, I said, I'll see you tomorrow. The line was holding. And the line continued to hold. And all of a
Okay.
sudden, I didn't smell ammonia coming from his breath. And I said to myself, yeah, maybe this is working. Again, this is my first patient after
Yeah.
4 years of chiropractic college. Hearing Dr. Michael Kale said, when the line is straight, he was from Greenville, South Carolina.
Oh
Michael
yeah.
Kale was my mentor for upper cervical. When the line is straight, people are going to get better. But Michael Kale, what if the line's straight, they don't get better? What if it rains Snickers bars? It ain't going to rain Snickers bars if the line is straight. They're going to get well. So I had this confidence and clarity that this patient was going to get well because his line was straight. And all of a sudden,
Yeah.
this ammonia from his breath is like not there anymore. And then his pupils start to like turn white. And I'm like, then I see his more pink skin coming around. And about 2 months of adjusting him, whatever was going on with his liver was no longer because he had a clean bill of health in 2 months. That right there was the miracle that I live by. That when sick people come into the office, adjust the upper cervical. That's it.
Mm.
That's one story that I'll die with. And I get emotional sometimes when I think about it because it happened 30 years ago. Um, I'm no longer in private practice. I grew too big too fast, so I don't
Sure.
get to see the miracles anymore. But let me tell you something. I always tell my doctors, especially the ones that were never brought up with upper cervical care, I said, this is where the miracles happen. All the nerves come from here. Christopher Reeves, when he broke this top bone, he couldn't even breathe without a breathing tube because this controls everything. I go, the miracles don't happen in the low back. You put a person on a side to adjust their low back, they might feel better pain wise, but you're not going to get muscular dystrophy. You're not going to get multiple sclerosis to disappear from a low back adjustment. But I've seen reports, and I've never had one personally, but I've seen or heard from friends that I would trust that multiple sclerosis has been cured, or at least the body became healthy enough to overcome that disease process through an
Sure.
adjustment. And upper cervical adjustments, or excuse me, upper cervical chiropractors listening to this podcast are nodding their heads saying, I agree. That's where the miracles happen. Upper
Hmm.
cervical, that's where it's at.
Interesting. Yeah, I think the key that you said there is that the body's getting healthier. Whether it's not the disease
Yeah,
may still exist in the body,
yeah.
but the body's able to overcome it.
But
Right?
we have cancer cells in our body right
Yeah.
now. We all know that that's been diagnosed, classified, and written. If the immune system is strong enough, it'll keep at bay those cancer cells from becoming a tumor. If those immune systems that we have in the thymus gland and now we know also in the intestinal system starts
Sure.
to wane, it becomes weakened, then those cancer cells continue to grow, continue to grow, continue to grow for even decades until finally there's a tumor that overcomes our body. So doesn't it make sense to keep our bodies healthy our whole life versus, I mean, everybody, I wouldn't say everybody, nobody considers their health until it's gone. And when they lose their health, when they have a diagnosis of something, oh God, no one's I do. Or if you're not, no one's an atheist when they get diagnosed with cancer. Oh God, please help me. If I can get rid of this, I'll do anything. And they pray, and all of a sudden they spend their waking moments to spend all of their money to get their health back. Well, it's a lot easier to keep your health than to try to get it back after you've abused your body or ignored your body for decades.
Yeah. No, that's great.
It is a hardcore.
So
It's hardcore.
yeah, well, it is, but it's just it's a philosophy, right? It's a it's not a it's not a ritual. It's not um, a prescription of you have to eat this, you have to eat that, you have to do this, you have to work out this way, you have to. And I think where people go wrong is they'll read stuff online or they'll talk to somebody and that person has a prescriptive thing. This is how you get healthy.
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe for that person. But what it really needs to be is that mental change of everything I do needs to be driving towards a healthier body, right?
you're right.
I'm not going to eat perfectly, but I need to eat better. I'm not going to exercise every day, but I need to exercise more often. If I'm used to sitting 11 hours a day behind a desk, maybe I try to get up a little more often and I only sit 9.5 hours,
Yes,
right? Those are the types of things that we as a society just need to start thinking about and doing because there's no magic button, there's no magic pill, there's no nothing. It's just all of those things together have to be a mental philosophy that we just start to work towards.
I agree. And I'll throw in one more thing. No one thinks about this, but think about this. The amount of intelligence that's locked in one cell. When the sperm enters an egg, that's one cell, two half cells together merge. There's so much intelligence in that 9 months. That intelligence can create eyeballs, ears, a nose, lips,
Yeah.
food that can be digested into light living tissues. That intelligence still stays on. I would argue that the human body wants to be healthy, but we just provide so much interference and toxins of chemicals that we eat, of lack of mobility, of lack of structural alignment, whatever it is. Medications, I believe. By the way, some medications are. I take Humira, for the record. I don't think that all medications is. I'm on a biologic. Okay,
Mhm.
let's just take that aside. But most, not most, but some medications are overused, abused, and misused.
Sure.
Going back to what I said, the human body wants to be healthy. And if we can remove a lot of interference, I think the body can express that intelligence through physical matter at a higher level, and that intelligence can organize matter into healthy living tissues. That's my
No,
philosophy.
that's great.
That's the philosophy I live with. That's the philosophy that I share with my doctors. That's the philosophy I share with my patients. And it's very empowering because their whole life, they've been watching TV ads, they've been reading magazine ads, they've been hearing from their doctors, well, you got to take this. If you don't take this, you can't get you healthy. And they think that they're waiting for the cure for cancer in laboratory. And that's not empowering. And I'm not saying that the big pharma is not trying to put themselves out of business by creating, right? Oh, we got a cure for cancer. Now we're out of business because it's a $1 trillion industry. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is, on a lower level, on a more granular level, the doctors want to make people, they want people to get healthy, but they truly think that drugs are the things that get people healthy. And that's just not so.
Yeah. So let's put an interesting twist on this before we have to wrap up. Let's take that human body and
Okay.
let's set it aside.
Okay.
And let's say that the entity we're talking about is your business.
Okay. I love that.
Works the same way, right? Because if we look at that business as a living, breathing entity,
It is.
again, there's no prescription hard and fast that's going to give you the business of your dreams. Everybody has a different path. Everybody has a different approach to it.
Yes.
Um, but if we take that business and we try to improve it just a little bit every day, if we be a little more conscious in the people we hire, a little more conscious in the messages we're putting out and how they connect to our customers, a little more conscious as leaders of the culture that we're breeding within our organization.
Say that word again.
All of these,
Say that word
yes,
again. Culture.
yes, the culture
Boom.
that we're breeding in the organization, right? And you do breed a culture in your organization. The one of the biggest mistakes, I just gave this speech to entrepreneurs here in Vegas, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. One of the biggest mistakes it can make is assuming that culture is going to take care of itself. What happens when culture takes care of itself? Well, we get the culture of probably the loudest voice in the room. And quite often that's not the CEO, because the CEO is waiting for the culture to take care of itself, right? You can't just let your body take care of itself. You have to be conscious of what you're doing for it. So same thing happens for business.
Yeah.
Talk to me, and you're going to love this one. Talk to me about a couple of those diseases that you've had in business over the last couple decades. What are those challenges? What are the top couple lessons that you had to learn along the way?
Culture, culture, culture. You saw me light up and you said culture. Culture
Yeah,
is the fertilization to make anything grow strong. And if you lack culture, it's like sterilized soil. No matter what kind of seed you put in there, nothing's going to grow, nothing's going to be successful. It's all about the culture. And that's what I spend at least 50% of my waking hours working on. Culture, period. And the larger you grow your organization, the easier it is for the culture to not be aligned.
yes,
Very easy to have good culture with just 2 or 3 people in an organization. Now have 150 people in an organization, have 12 different offices. Each office has about 10 people. Man, one sour grape apple person, that culture is going to be maligned. One toxic individual can screw the culture up for that organization. That's what I work on. Culture. Because when you have good culture, I promise you, you will eventually have a very successful organization. That's what I've learned. That's the most important thing I can give to you and your audience today. I can give you a lot of other stuff
yeah,
that are also very important. But you said, what's the one thing? Culture. Make sure your
mm,
culture is good. And by the way, culture is like a relationship. You go on a date with a person and you connect, okay? And you go on a second date and you connect even deeper. And a third date and you connect deeper and say, I want to make this person more part of my life. And a
yeah,
fourth, you can't rush a relationship. Just as you can't force culture. Culture just happens. Well, Dr. Phil, how does that happen? You got to
yeah,
allow it to happen, but you got to make sure that the people that are in that organization have a chemistry, have respect. Our 3 tenets of what we look for to provide good culture. That's how deep we go. We have 3 most important factors: growth mindset, collaboration, and hard workers. So if you're a hard worker, if you have a growth mindset, and you're a collaborator, team
yeah,
collaboration, team player, those are the 3 components that we look for, that we know if you have that, you're probably going to fit into our culture. If you want to push things off, if you're a slacker, if you don't want to go to seminars to continue to learn and grow, you're not going to fit in with our culture. And like a whirlpool, you'll be shoved out real fast. But if you
yeah,
have those 3, then again, that whirlpool sucks you in. And once you're with us for about 6 months, that's about where it takes time for the culture to spread. You know, when you have a new employee, sometimes it takes 3 to 6 months for that invisible dialogue, that invisible communication to take place. I tell my chiropractors that are relatively new that want to make the changes happen overnight, I go, allow it to evolve, just like relationships. Relationships, are you married?
I am.
Okay. And your first date, your second, your third, your fourth date, you probably realize this might be the one I want to spend the rest of my life with, right?
Yeah.
But you didn't ask her to marry her by the first week, did you?
No, I didn't.
Took time. Took time. Some people do.
Yeah.
I was dating. I knew I wanted to marry Phoebe. When I realized how smart she's a pretty girl, so I wanted to date her because she was pretty. But of course, I realized how smart she was, and that's when I wanted to marry her. But it
Yeah.
took about 2 years for the relationship to become solid for me to ask her to marry. I mean, I was fortunate enough that she said yes. But again, what I'm saying is culture has to evolve. You have to grow culture like a relationship.
No, I like that. So I can't wait for you to take that culture, by the way, and get it out nationally. I know that's on the roadmap, but I can't wait to see you here in Vegas as well as what you do in the Northeast. Then I can say, yeah, I knew Dr. Phil back when.
And
So let's go to
we'll
the
do it together. We'll do
yeah,
it
exactly.
together.
Well, there you go. So let's go back to the mid '90s, Dr. Phil.
Yeah.
You've got a chance to tell that Dr. Phil one thing, and we've talked about culture. We'll set culture aside. What's that thing that you want to tell your younger self that you wish you'd have known when you started all of this?
Can I curse or should I just withhold from
Oh,
cursing?
curse away.
Get the fuck out of that shithole that you put, but that you open with the fuck. You do this. Ask me that question again. Ask me that.
So so let's go back to the mid '90s, Dr. Phil. Right? You got a chance to tell him one thing to take with him through this business journey. What's something you wish you'd have known at that point?
If I could go back and tell my younger self one thing, I
Yeah,
would have said, get out of that shithole that you put yourself in when you first opened your practice. Yes, you had no money. You opened your first practice for $3,000, but the moment you can afford to uplift yourself to a nicer office, do it because you're going to save yourself a lot of heartache along the way. I didn't have the courage and determination to move. So I stayed in an office for 22 years on the second floor that
yeah,
smelled of urine because homeless people would use my hallway as sometimes shelter to sleep. If there was going to be crime in the area that I was located in, it was going to be where my office was located.
yeah.
I'll give you something even funny. It's not funny, but it's funny. There was a town drunkard that used to always pass out in our front lawn in the office complex that I was in.
Hmm.
One day, this town drunkard looked like he was sleeping. He was leaning against the wall, and he was like this. Hour later, he was still sleeping. Another hour later, he was still there. By 4 or 5 hours later, I said, Michelle, you think he's dead? I was just thinking the same thing. Well, I didn't make the phone call, but a few hours later, there was yellow tape around. So we had a guy that died on my front lawn. And I got patients coming in looking at this, and they're thinking, is this location safe? And I go, yes.
Exactly.
I should have given myself more respect. So if I can go back and change one thing, it would have been that. I would have said, Dr. Phil, you could do better. You deserve better. Your patients deserve better. Move your location to a more reputable place, part of town, and you could afford it. Even if you don't think you could afford it, I didn't think I could afford it. I should have been able to dig a little deeper and move myself. That's the one thing I would have done differently.
Interesting. We talk about all these things that kind of shape our career and our philosophy and the way we are. I would wonder if being in that shithole that you were in
Yeah,
helped to set your standards for what you wanted in the clinics now.
it absolutely did. But I don't think I don't think I needed 22 years. But
Yeah,
I can say this, and man, we hadn't had this conversation, so we didn't have this dialogue. So
yeah,
what you just said, it rings so true. And I do share this with my doctors when I do training with them. I do a lot of training with them. We do training at least 3 times a year. All
hmm.
hands on board, all staff. I get to train and we
It's that
train
growth
them.
mindset.
And
Yeah,
so I said, it was me sharpening the sword. And they know where I came from. I will sometimes take tours of where I came from and go, Dr. Phil, you came from. Yeah, it was very humble beginnings. I knocked on 3,000 doors because I didn't have any money to market. And I was afraid if I spent the last $100 for a TV ad or for a television ad, for a newspaper ad, I'd get no return on the investment. So I knocked on doors because at least I could do that. That wasn't going to cost me money. And I did that. But I grinded. And, you know, I will take them back. But I will also say this because I was in such a desolate area,
yeah,
my processes and my procedures and my skill sets had to be so good that despite the lousy location, they still wanted to see me. and I still became successful, and I willed my hands to get better. Because if it wasn't really, 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 really good, they would have
Yeah.
gone somewhere else. If it was just mediocre, if my skill sets in performing a day one and a day two, if my policies and procedures weren't tight and confusing, it would have been another excuse for them to not come back. As a business owner, we have to take away all of the obstacles that the person has so they can say yes. The more obstacles you take away and the easier it is for the person to say yes, you've just acquired a partnership with that person that you're going to form a relationship with. But if there's
Yep.
3 or 4 or 5 or 6 obstacles along the way and it becomes easier and easier and easier to say yes, then you struggle to grow your business. So I had one massive obstacle, which was the location and the area that I was in. I had to remove every other obstacle. And because I did that, and I did that well, once I moved myself into a beautiful location, put myself with X-ray, invested $250,000 into my first nice looking office,
Yep.
it was like I had this 55-pound tire that I was trying to run a race with, and someone cut that string and no more was that 50-pound. Boom! The office grew like instantaneously. I go, oh my God, I had no idea how easy it could have been.
Yep. That's unreal.
Yeah.
After 22 years, that's a tough road to hoe. Um, well, Dr. Phil, this has been a pleasure. We could talk forever. But let me give you a chance to wrap it up. Anything that I haven't asked that you want to throw out there? Anything coming up that you want people to be aware of? What you got going on that you want to finish this up with?
Look, I love these questions because this is the first podcast. And I don't do, you reached out to me. I looked at some of the podcasts. I
Sure.
go, wow, this is great questions, great interviewer. You're the first person outside of my chiropractic profession that I've done a podcast with. So I love these questions because they're not typical chiropractic questions.
Yeah.
Um, but I will say, if you're a chiropractor and you maybe want to do a merger or a partnership or some sort of acquisition, reach out to me. My email address is Dr. Phil. And of course, I'm being self-serving right now. Dr. Phil, DRPHIL at RxWellness.com. That's my personal email address. So, or RxWellness at RxWellness.com. That's my website address. Just look me up. We're looking for strong partners. If you have a nice business that you're proud of and you're looking for maybe a potential, what I call the perfect retirement plan, when you put your office together, you can get a multiplier that exceeds what you could normally do by yourself. So if you work with us, we might be able to get you much more than you could for your retirement with us than without us. So that's the one thing I'd like to say on a personal level. But professionally, now you've covered great questions. There's not anything that I could think about because, again, some of the questions you've asked me, I've never been asked before.
Terrific. That's the way we like it. Now, Dr. Phil, this has been a pleasure, and we'll get those links into the show notes for people, so we make sure they get a chance to get on them.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the reach out, and it's been a pleasure talking to you as well.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you for coming. So that's a wrap for this episode of Legacy Unscripted. If today's conversation sparks something in you, don't just let it sit. Take action today to build your future. Make sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you've got a story to share or you just want to connect with me or Dr. Phil, you know where to find us. Until next time, keep it real, keep it bold, and keep living your legacy. Okay, there we go.